Kingston, thank you. So it would seem we are on the verge of the UK making the announcement. All indications are South Africa will be among those countries that will be moved in this, sort of modified system where they move from the traffic light system, red, green, yellow, to a red list and the category known as the rest of the world. We might be moving to the rest of the world. How significant would that be?
Well, good morning, Tulasizwe. It's extremely significant. We certainly expect that we will be moved off the red list, hopefully by the end of this week when the British government makes the announcement. There's been extensive engagement both by the South African government as well as by the South African business community and many other stakeholders. I think we all recognize that tourism has an absolutely critical role to play, not just in generating very significant economic activity, but providing hundreds of thousands, if not more than that, of jobs that currently are at risk because we've been unable to properly open up the tourism industry, particularly to the UK, which is one of our biggest foreign destinations of travelers. And of course, the tourism industry feeds into the leisure industry much more broadly. We've got some 10 weeks now before the holiday season really starts. And even now, activity is beginning to pick up. So as a country, we need to make sure that we're fully prepared to take advantage of this shift should it happen this week.
I think for those of us who don't follow these developments really that closely in terms of the trends in tourism, etc., sometimes the confusion can arise of, it's one thing to say you are on the red list if you are coming from South Africa, and therefore when you arrive in the UK, you need to quarantine for at least 10 days, go through, the COVID-19 test, etc., and whatever other requirements are in place. But talk to me about the UK as an inward-bound market for South Africa. This red list decision impacted that as well.
Absolutely so, because of course, anybody who travels to a red list country, it doesn't matter whether they come from the UK or indeed they originate from South Africa, when they return or when they enter the UK are forced to quarantine. In fact, you have to quarantine for 10 days in a hotel. It costs some £2,200. So it's very expensive, very time consuming, and therefore it's a major disincentive for people who would want to come to South Africa on holiday. Let's say they want to come for 2 weeks, only to find they need to spend probably as much again on going back to the UK, where they have to stay in a quarantine hotel. All of that would disappear. But it's not just, of course, tourism. It's business traffic. It's people who want to maintain contact with their friends and family who've been precluded from being able to do so. And every person who visits South Africa is a potential contributor, directly or indirectly, to economic activity, as I said, be it tourism, be it spending more generally in the economy, or indeed contributing to investment and trade opportunities between South Africa and the UK. So it has very significant implications if they're able to return to the UK and carry on with their lives as normal without the sort of constraints that have impacted and imposed thus far.
So I imagine that part of the decision-making in the UK is informed by the trends in as far as community spread of the virus in South Africa is concerned, but also in as far as issues to do with our vaccination program ramping up, not nearly where it should be, but ramping up. On our side, what are the things that we need to do to ensure that, this status is maintained going forward?
Well, the critical issue, as you said, is that we're able to demonstrate that we are increasing our level of vaccination for the adult population at large. You've talked already on the show about the fact that the Vuma weekend kicked off this last weekend. 350,000 vaccinations were administered. It's much better than it was, but inadequate. We've got to actually get to about 15 million people over the next 10 weeks. So that's a very significant increase in the level of vaccination. Now, they won't, I believe, let people into the UK unless they have been fully vaccinated, whether that's a single J&J dose or a 2 times Pfizer dose. And therefore, we need to be able to ensure that we can equip people with the wherewithal so to do. The sooner that we can increase the level of vaccination, we know the sooner we will see the transmission rate drop. People's healths will be protected, as indeed will the healthcare system more generally. So our appeal to everybody is to ensure that we do encourage those that we know who haven't been vaccinated to get vaccinated as quickly as possible, to go for their second jab as soon as they're eligible so to do. That will be a very important ingredient in ensuring that we stay off any red list, not just, of course, for the UK, but anywhere else around the world, as we see these systems changing very rapidly, as people are trying to adapt to both higher transmission rates where countries have not vaccinated, or as new variants emerge.
Lastly, Mr. Kingston, throw into that equation the issue of vaccine passports. South Africa is, of course, mulling this whole idea of how that will work. I've heard one or two anecdotes about, if you have that sort of primary healthcare card looking card that you get when you are vaccinated, you might encounter problems in traveling to certain countries simply because, it's a card that's really filled out by the healthcare practitioner at the point at which they administer the jab. And in a country that previously faced issues, even including from countries such as the UK, around the ease with which our passport, for example, could be faked, how important is it that we get that aspect right of the vaccine passports that are needed, the digital certificates, to be able to prove that I'm actually vaccinated and not face problems at Heathrow?
You're absolutely right, Tulisi's. We need to avoid any chance that there's the scope for fraud or fake replications, not only of passports, of course, but of these certificates. As the President and indeed the Minister have both said, there's work going on. We think that it will actually become apparent in the course of the next few days for digital vaccine certification, which can't be fraudulently reproduced, which will be able to give everybody the assurance that they have been vaccinated with what vaccine, at what time, in which particular location. And that will, of course, be a necessary ingredient for people to be able to pass freely, to be able to admit it onto airlines, to be able to travel internationally. We're seeing this happening worldwide. We know in our conversations with the National Department of Health that they've been working very closely with the World Health Organization and others to ensure that this form of certification will indeed be acceptable and cannot be fraudulently reproduced. So an absolutely critical part of the equation, as you've said.
Martin Kingston, always a pleasure engaging with you, sir. I really appreciate it.